one thing that was blatantly clear to me was that like when we come here, it's a blip of time. I mean, it is the smallest minute. When you're an infinite being of a soul, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years down here, if you're lucky, is nothing. We are it's we're in and out like a flash in the pan. So it's not at a soul level, this is not like, oh, I'm gonna take on these 80 years and it's gonna, I'm gonna really suffer. It's like I'm gonna go and be, you know, 5 minutes. That's because that's what it feels like in that scope. Like I knew I had just come and gone when I was on the other side. We're not here being punished. I mean, yes, you take on karma because, the laws are the laws, right? But this isn't a punishment. And that's why I think a lot of people think that we come here and that they're being punished. It's not. Everything in the universe is working for your highest and best good. It is. You just have to find that light within it because this is all shadow work. You have to find the light and cling to that.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we're speaking with Brheanna. She's had a near-death experience. She's also the owner of Light and Breezy, which is the name of her company. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, thank you so much, Brheanna, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I generally start though with everyone, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit about when you were a bit younger, where the Breezy name came from and all these types of things. But I go even further. I go to like your childhood and I try to
Yeah.
find out a little bit about little Brheanna. Did you come in as someone who was outgoing, sensitive? Like what kind of child were you?
No, I was actually pretty stoic as a kid. I didn't talk much. So
Hmm.
everybody kind of thought something was wrong with me. I was very observer oriented. I've kind of talked about this before, but I had what we would call an imaginary friend, which later comes in when I start going through my big spiritual awakening. But her name was Apple Pie, and that was really the only person I talked to, or well, she was as real to me as anybody else, So, yeah, I kind of kept to myself. I was always studying. Well, I was independent study. I've always been I'm a chronic learner. My mom used to say your biggest vice is education. Like I just always want to learn. So I was very into like educating myself, but I also noticed, when I look back, I was studying like systems. Like I loved anthills. I remember I would sit and watch anthills for hours.
Wow.
Or I would climb trees and just watch the way the wind blew in the trees. But yeah, I kind of kept to myself. I had a lot of siblings. Um, my family was chaotic, to say it nicely. Uh, and so I had step siblings, and then my mom had kids, and my dad had kids on his own. So I just kind of kept to myself a lot. Yeah.
Did you have between, because you're saying it sounds like you had, I mean, like a large split family or just kind of all over the place there. Anybody have religious, like, did they bring you into a religious belief system or anything, or in faith or spirituality?
So that's kind of funny. At the time when I was real young, no. No one was really religious. We had addiction problems that ran through my family. So I had a very like traumatic childhood. My father I didn't even meet until I was over 10.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, I was kind of given the impression that he was dead, and then I found out he was not. Um, so then when I'll fast forward, my mom and my ex-stepfather split, he got very into religion. So that was slightly an influence later in my life, but at that point I had already been kind of moved out of the situation. But no, religion really wasn't a big thing until I was in, I would say about 13 or 14. I started independently studying religion. My mom has been married and divorced, I think, on her fifth marriage. So she kind of adopted whatever religion the man was that she was at that time. So there was like Mormon influence and, some Christianity and, you know, all kinds of different influences. But
Mhm.
I just became very interested in religion at a young age because I would go to church and I felt something very deep, but it felt wrong. Like there was something out of place, and I started to notice inconsistencies or hypocrisies in religion. And so I was like, well, where is that coming from? If you know, only God can judge you, then why are we sitting here judging? Why are, and like all those things started to really kind of, I think a lot of us kids think that. I'm like, why did Adam and Eve, why does Eve have a belly button? Why did they have a belly button? Like all those things, just started like formulating in my brain. And so I started just getting very into religion. And so I mean, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, all of it. I just started to research it because I was like, somebody's got to be, you know, right here, right? And then I realized that there's truth in all of them,
Hmm.
and that's I think what especially as I go through later into my big awakening period, I started to realize that I was on this path for a very long time, a lot of us think like, oh, we had the spiritual awakening. I can look back in hindsight and be like, I was studying for this my whole life.
Hmm.
It was, but it just comes to us, and I kind of talk about this about I think we have a lot less free will than we think we do. I think that with what everything that I saw in my NDE, but also I'm a licensed astrologer, I can look at your astrology and your transits and pretty much tell you every time you had like a major turning point in your life. Um, and even that, like I thought I was independently studying history. I loved history. I read all the time, especially like Forbidden Lost History, Hermetics, all of it. And, then I was like, oh, I was studying for this particular path I was going to go on my whole life.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, you're a lifelong learner. That's what I'm picking
I
up right
am.
away. Yeah, like you like I can already tell like you take it and you just love it and then you want more. And so
Yeah.
that's I can already sense that with you.
I,
That
I always tell
yeah.
people, I'm like, I'm a rabbit hole connoisseur. Like,
Yeah.
I have excavated every rabbit hole that anyone has ever gone down. I'm
Yeah.
like,
I think that's the
like,
best way to be at times because it gives you that's why with the show too, I'm not biased in any way. I will talk
yeah.
to someone who is really hardcore religious and had a
Mhm.
very religious type experience, or someone who's had, maybe they were an atheist and they had some other alien encounter or whatever. If
Yeah.
you take everything, it all kind of meshes together at some point. You start to kind of see correlations between everything. So that's what I like.
Well,
'Cause I like
especially
to
if
take it in.
you look at everyone is the creator of their reality. So that's the paradox of the universe, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
we're all creating the reality that we came here to experience. So who's to say my experience or that experience or their, are wrong or it's just different, because that's the experience that soul chose to come here to experience for themselves.
I can relate to what you said about the church thing because I didn't have religion growing up, but I remember when I decided to take it on myself and go to church. I remember I kind of sat there and kind of analyzed the whole experience in a way that was interesting because I had that feeling too of there's something really good about this. Like something feels good, but then there'd be like messages coming out, and I'm like, that doesn't hit me right. That's not hitting me right. And what I think, I look back now, what I think it was that I was really feeling at first, and I still think it's a huge piece of why a church and faith can be nice to have, is that everyone's there seeking the same type of thing. Everyone's going after this something bigger than ourselves. Like that's and that feeling alone isn't you don't get that driving down the street where someone's cutting you off on the road. Like you don't. So when you go
Yeah.
into that space, you're in that space, and that was so that's I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that might have been what you were feeling. But then as you got to
Yeah.
discover it, you were like, oh well, there's some things that resonate and some that don't.
Yeah, I definitely think the resonance part is a big key factor in when it came to religion because, like I said, I would study them. Even now, I'll take my children to church, and we will kind of go through each one together as well because I think there's an important quality of exploration of spiritualism and to see different perspectives because it does bring you to understanding that. What we're seeking is, yes, something higher than ourselves, but it's to remember who we are at the soul level, and
Mhm.
that's what we're really coming back to. A lot of religions, they have their rules or their boundaries, their beliefs, their all of that. But how does that resonate with you is the key, and so that's why I don't think any one religion is right or wrong or but it led me down this path for sure.
I was gonna ask you for because we're gonna soon get to the part where something happened to you here. Does that have anything to do with this, what you said about the name that you were given as a child, like with this, I think it was Breezy.
Breezy,
Um,
yeah. So I
yeah.
named my business Light and Breezy because when I got into the business part of this, so it's funny because I used to own a farm. After my NDE, my near-death experience, I went completely rogue. Everybody was like, "You're selling your $1 million farm to go and do a spiritual practice." Like it was so rogue for everyone. But I
Mhm.
knew at like the soul, this is what I'm supposed to do. I knew I was on a path. So when I was growing up, my nickname was Breezy. I was called Breezy since I would think I was 3 weeks old until I was 15. But I was, child trafficked young by, well, I don't want to get too into that, but my family was very chaotic and there was a lot of addiction, there was a lot of issues. Like I said, my family was breaking apart. I was moving all over the country, and when I was 15, I was going through some really horrific things, and I just decided I was like, I don't want to be Breezy anymore. So I kind of switched an identity, if you will, and was trying to leave my trauma in the past and went back to Brheanna. And then when I went through my NDE and then I started communicating with my spirit guides, this is when Apple Pie comes back into my life. I realized that she was a guardian angel with me my whole time. And she does explain to me that she was never gone, but she had left my reality so that I could experience. And so this all comes in when we get into my NDE. But um, that's when I decided I was going to name my company Light and Breezy because I felt finally light in that
Mm.
area and that name. So I was like, you know what? She deserved a chance and I'm going to give it to her.
So
So
it's
it's kind of a big inner healing for me too.
kind of like a kind of like a releasing of it, but also acknowledging it still, acknowledging
Yeah,
your name, acknowledging your past, right?
right.
Okay. That's so
And
interesting.
rewriting the
Yeah.
history for me, it's like that trauma was so important and intricate to my future and where I was going to end up. But I think a lot of people I can look back at the things that had happened to me with almost a lot of compassion and love, um, and even appreciation. Even though there was horrific things that were done through me, um, I wouldn't be the woman I am today had I not gone through those experiences. So for me, it's kind of that full circle invoking back in. And shining light into a situation that most people would have been like, I can't believe you survived that. And so yeah, I think that's important for people in the healing process too, because we can only take on so much trauma. We can only hold it for so long, and eventually we can't grow out of it. Or, I do a lot of work with manifestation. A lot of people are trying to manifest. The biggest problem that people are facing is that they're trying to manifest new things while holding on to old past, old pain. You have to release that, or you can't fill that up with the light that you're trying to bring into your life. So that was a big part of why I kind of came back with putting the name Breezy in my business as well, because I wanted it to reflect and remind me how far I came from that, past version.
We may even dig deeper into this a little later, but one of the questions I was thinking of is why we put ourselves through. When I was super young and just getting in the work world, I started working with young youth in social work and pregnant teens, especially. And they would tell me their stories, and I'd have to read their case files from when they were children and the things they went through. And I remember I'd come home and I'd like cry because it was like it affected me so bad. Like I was like, this is how do I, or I would get almost like this complex of like, I don't deserve the life I've had, even though I've had a lot of things too, because I'd see what other people went through and I'd be like, why would they like? And then, fast forward to now, I talk to people on a daily about their near-death experiences, and they come back and they say, yeah, like everything we do, we were meant to go through, and we
Mhm.
chose this, and I'm like, why would we choose to go through those things? But then you go, you know, some of us get to a point we can look back and be like, oh, good thing I did go through that because it made me this person now. I don't think everybody gets there. Maybe that's why there's a reincarnation cycle. I don't know. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I'm sure you can look back because you're talking about some things, you're being quite, you're being a little private about it, and I respect that. But what I'm saying is there's some things that probably were harsh and you can maybe look at now and be like, well, that made me this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, we can kind of get into that a little bit into like what I experienced with the NDE, but the reason we choose these things, a lot of people, you have to understand that when people say God is all that is, right? So if you want to say God, creator, source, whatever, it's all the same. It's unconditional love. That's all it is. It's like that's why every person that has an NDE talks about this like overwhelming sense of love, right? Because that's all there is. That's it. It's like
Right.
just unconditional love. So if that's all you've ever known as a soul, right? You have no polarity, you have no duality to that. So how would you even know to appreciate it? Because it would be all that there is. So we come here to experience the duality of that. So pain, suffering, poverty, loss, grief, even joy, even it's not always that we can't come here to have a bad experience because we are having the duality the right here in this lifetime, so we'll have those moments of unconditional love, and then we have that polarity to look at it because then you can actually experience both sides of that. And that's what we're doing here. We're here to experience and embody the polarity of what we are, because we are the kingdoms within you. There's so many hermetic texts that talk about this. The kingdom, you are the spark of God. So you are here creating the duality or the polarity so that you can understand even what all that unconditional love actually is, because otherwise it would just be everything that there is.
Mhm.
There, kind of a comedy show that I really enjoy. My daughter watches all the time, called The Good Place. Have you ever seen that movie
I
or
haven't.
that show?
No, I'll have to
Oh,
check it
you
out.
should watch it. It's funny. It's about their version of like heaven and hell. But I don't want to give it away for people. Spoiler alert if you haven't.
Yeah.
But they do eventually get to what we would deem heaven. And everyone's just so bored out of their mind because
Uh-huh.
everything is great, and it's like, imagine if everything was just great all the time and you had to. So we actually come here to do these experiences more like a vacation, not a vacation, but we enjoy,
Vacation from perfection.
basically, we
Yeah.
were like, oh, how fun would it be to go down? Because the one thing, so we'll get, and maybe I should just get into my ND so I don't totally lose people. But one thing that was blatantly clear to me was that, like, when we come here, it's a blip of time. I mean, it is the smallest, minute. When you're an infinite being of a soul, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years down here, if you're lucky, is nothing. We are it's we're in and out like a flash in the pan. So it's not at a soul level, this is not like, oh, I'm gonna take on these 80 years and it's gonna, I'm gonna really suffer. It's like it's like I'm gonna go and be, 5 minutes. That's because that's what it feels like in that scope. Like I knew I had just come and gone when I was on the other side.
Let's move into it then because I want to find out exactly kind of like the timeline of how this happened, right? And then we'll kind of lean into that a little bit. So maybe take us back to the day it happened, like what was going on in your life? How did this kind of start to kind of was it something that happened immediate? Just kind of give us some backstory as to how you got to where the day it happened that you had the ND.
Yeah, so it was in December of 2020. So you gotta remember we're in COVID. And I ended up developing a really bad cough and I went to the emergency room. They gave me COVID test, but they uh didn't check for anything else. They were just like, well, let's put you on antibiotics. It's not COVID. And so I was on antibiotics for a day or two and I went back in. I'm like, it's getting worse. So they put me on steroids. Again, COVID tests, no COVID. I go back in 2 days later and they give me another COVID test and they're like, well, steroids really haven't had time to kick in. So just go home, rest. Well, later that night, I ended up collapsing in my home. I blacked out. My now ex-husband was there. He brought me to the emergency room and they were, I was very in and out at that point. Like I could barely breathe. And they're going to airlift me to Rochester, which has the Mayo Clinic. But it was COVID, so everything was full. So I was in the ICU. And then I don't really remember much in that time frame. I remember that because COVID, we couldn't have people in the back with us. So I remember just being like very alone. But um, I end up at the foot of my bed. And so I don't remember it being like, a lot of people, I didn't even have the concept of death yet at that point. I was like, what is happening? But it felt very surreal. But I'm like watching this happen, and then there was a voice beside me, and it was this girl that I know in this lifetime. I don't know her well. I actually went to school with her father. So the reason why she was the messenger, I still to this day, I don't understand. But basically, she told me that I had chosen an exit clause in my soul contract, that I was going to take on an extremely hard life, and this was my check-in, if you will.
Oh.
Whether I wanted to go home or if I wanted to come back. If I come back, I was going to be put on this path of my spiritual journey, and I would be working with people doing healing and things like that. Um, that's short form version. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this vortex. So when people say, they saw the light, mine was more like, I don't know how to, human words are hard with this, like this swirl of energy. And so I was kind of like sucked into it. And then I started seeing all these symbols, and I later ended up discovering what most of them were, like Metatron's cube and a lot of the or the plutonic solids, so I was seeing sacred geometry. And it was like passing through what would be my body, but my essence, because you still had some consciousness of your physical body, but you're not in your body, which is such a weird thing to
Hmm.
describe. But so I had this energy coming through, and then I had two guides, two beings, and they were like lights. There was no, like the first girl looked like a person, and but she's not passed on too. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Like she's very much alive and well in this lifetime. So it's so weird to me. But these ones were like light beings, and I could tell they were really excited to see me. So I knew that we were close. But that's where I kind of got this they were so like, when you, and I use this metaphor a lot, but when you go on like a roller coaster or an amusement park ride and you get off and the people waiting for you are like, how was it? And you're like, oh, it was amazing, right? That same kind of feeling, like that we aren't here long. And so they're just excited, that I'm on this ride, that kind of thing. And then so now I'm seeing this, I don't want to say abyss because that doesn't feel right. Void. Um, and all this like dome above me turned into all of my life, like little screens, if you will, of my life. And it was showing me how every single thing that had ever happened was connected. Uh, from every heartbreak, every emotion, everything. And it was the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. It was all connected. And it all led to, and then I could see over here me laying in that hospital bed. Um, that's why when I say I'm like, I don't know if I believe in free will quite as much as we've been told, only because it's so intricately designed, so precise, and then that kind of went away, and then I was shown the collective. So all of us, you, me, everything, and how every single one of us were connected, and that our stories were not separate, that we were all interconnected. And um, so when I talk about, separation, I do what's called astral surgery. And one of the things like I talk a lot about with people when we're doing like device removals or, JCL removals is we chose to come here to play the game of separation. That's what we wanted to experience. So we take on these karmic devices, we take on karmic pathways because we want to. It's so funny when people are like, I did not choose this. It's like, oh, you did. You did because you wanted to experience this. And again, it's just a blip of time. Um, So yeah, that was I mean, pretty much. I'm gonna kind of give you the shorter version since we're talking about other stuff. But yeah, that was pretty much the gist of it. So I took away from it, um, how important it was for us to understand that there's no separation. Because when you embody fully that you're not separate from anyone else, you are stepping into that unconditional love. Because I could say I have some guy who's a jerk at a gas station, whatever. I never get upset. It's so hard to rattle me now because like I understand that they're just projecting their own path, their own pain, their whatever it is that's affecting them. So I'm actually a lot more connected back to the source unconditional love. Like I get it. It's hard, And so um
Yeah.
that's I think what that really brings you back to, the coming back to source, coming back to the creator, and I believe that you are the observer in this reality. I always tell people, I'm like, your higher self is really driving this car. You're more of the conscious observer and creator. But you're getting a lot of information. People just don't I don't want to say that they don't know because I think deeply we do know that we are getting guidance.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, well, I just can't hear my guides. I'm like, they're talking to you all the time. You have just been trained by society to take away your power. And there's strength in us being powerless, right? And this has been going on for 200 or 2,000 years that this designed system was to entrap us so that we didn't remember how truly powerful you are. Because if you talk about God being all powerful, you are a spark of that. That's what all of our souls are. I talk a lot about, I'm like, if you've ever been to an open casket, so, funeral, how the body almost looks fake
Hmm.
because it's that essence, that light is what we are, what makes us who we are, right? And that is the source, God looking through a person. So you're seeing that light, So I'm like, yeah, you are the creator, and we are all the spark of God, So I think that changes the way that people perceive themselves and that kind of, I don't know, kind of lost my train of thought there.
No, that's no. I mean, I always say thank you to for sharing of what happened there. So, did you when you were okay? I'm trying to see how to ask this question. When you were on the other side, like when you were going through it, I'm assuming first of all that your human suffering had at least temporarily gone away. Like if you were sick, you were not feeling good. So
Oh
that
yeah.
that would have disappeared. And at the same time, did you realize at that moment like this is real? Like this is actually really happening, or did it feel dreamlike?
No, it felt real. Yeah, so like I was immediately detached from this person, this physical body. I say to people, I'm like, it's like, you have a car, right? You love your car, it gets you where you need to go. But if you got out of your car and started to walk away, you're not gonna freak out and be like, oh, I need to get back in my car, right?
Hmm.
There's a detachment. That's how you feel about your physical body. So yeah, the suffering, yeah, immediately went away. But I was given this choice, so I chose to come back. Um, but as soon as I came back, and I remember coming to, and the nurse was sitting here, and I was crashing out again, or like my blood pressure was, so there was alarms going off, and I was like, no, no, it's supposed to do that. And I remember him being like, no, it's not. But I was immediately trying to like, no, I want to go. I was like, I immediately regretted coming back in that moment because I felt like I had this elephant just sitting on my chest. I was like, fungal pneumonia feels like you're drowning. It's like slowly drowning. And that's what I immediately come back into. And I'm like, ugh, I'm like, no, no, it's fine. Just turn it off.
Hmm. Hmm. Did it
So,
did
yeah.
it shift this and again this is you'll see this is how I work when I'm talking to somebody. It's like it's almost like I don't know whether I'm hearing the questions to ask. I'm just discovering that that's probably what's happening. It's just like when I do my songwriting. But did you um when you came back, all right, so you've come back, was there an immediate feeling of like did you have any kind of epiphany like wow, like that is this is re like or did it slowly come into your a mindset that you had just experienced something, or was it immediately like, whoa, okay, that's confirmation. That's what I thought we were. Like that. Like what was going
Yeah,
on internally?
kind of like a fine wine. It envelops,
Mhm.
right? It all hit me very quickly. Um, but even to this day, I still have things that I'm like, oh, it all pulls, back into that space. I mean, not so much now, but within that first 3, 4 years when I was, because immediately the path opened, when they talked about like you're going to get on your spiritual path, it really did just divinely open. I worked with shamans. I found one in my local area, but I was working with shamans in Ireland, in the Canary Islands. I was working with spiritual leaders in Australia, and it was like they all just kind of came together. And so that's why I said, I'm like, you are more divinely guided. Even what you just said, like, I don't know if they come into my ear and ask the questions. Well, it's interesting because on your right side, right above your ear, we have what's called a receiver cell crystal, and that is what we channel through. So when I do astral surgery, we replace this, but what's happening is you're getting channeled messages because your brain is an antenna, right? It's a receiver and it's outputting. So when you're channeling, you are pulling things into that receiver crystal and is translating it into an understanding that you understand, right? So the
Mhm.
more you work with channeling, um, you realize what's not just your voice in your head. We just hear, like, especially people that have racing thoughts all the time. Oh, my brain won't shut off. Oftentimes there's just channeling and they just haven't figured out how to organize that yet. So yeah, that was funny that you pointed to that side too, because that is the side your receiver crystal's on. So
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
they would communicate through you.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think that was the question, right? Did I
Yeah,
answer that?
absolutely. No, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Well, yeah, and that if it had come to you right away that something exceptional had happened, something that outside of your ordinary had happened. Like I talk to people who would have defined themselves as atheists before their NDEs, right?
yeah,
And those ones are
yeah,
really interesting because in atheism, what I've understood is so different. It could mean anything. It could mean anything that you don't believe in anything, or it could just mean that you don't believe because you don't know. You don't like you need to have some kind of proof or whatnot, right? Like people
right.
have different feelings around that, but there are people who their paradigm shifts immediately, right? They change jobs, their relationships end, their like everything can kind of happen so quick because
Yeah.
there was this massive awakening, but you're saying it kind of slowly, you came back. You weren't like, wow, what just happened? I mean, you're probably trying to feel better first because you were still probably sick. You're trying to get
Well,
better.
I remembered right away the whole thing, but for me, I think what really dived me in was that when I was coming to and I was good enough that they were gonna discharge me from the hospital, my doctor is like, "You're gonna have a very long recovery. There's a lot of damage done to your lung, and I was in perfect shape in like a day and a half. It was like miraculous healing. And so when I started to look at what happened there and then, basically the impossible happening, um, that was kind of my confirmation. I think that I wasn't, because a lot of people, and of course I dived into NDEs at that point. I was, trying to figure out what everyone else
Mhm.
had experienced. And then I noticed that mine was a little bit different, but that also is what led me down the path of conscious creation and unity consciousness. This is how, so I started to really understand that, so we get these little nuggets, along the way. This is why, again, I'm like free will, it's all kind of laid out and it's so strategic, but it takes you back onto that path. And remember, I'm, a rabbit hole person. So I'm like trying to understand. I'm like, okay, so miraculous healing, that's a thing. I'm starting to, look at other people's NDs. I was like, mine is kind of different than most others, but um, again, you're creating the reality. So how do I function? I function more in the realm of science and things like that. So it would only stand to make sense that they would give it to me in a way that looked very like physics. Now I didn't
Mhm.
study physics prior to this, but that was one little fun nugget that also came back is I understood physics. when I came back. Like I had studied it. I would just blurt things out about dark matter, dark energy, or quantum entanglement, all these things, and I was like, "Is that right?" Because I wasn't like, and it really freaked
Wow.
out my family. I mean, the people around me really were starting, even my daughters. So my daughter was the first one that pointed out. So if you've ever heard of a walk-in soul.
I've heard of
um,
the term. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I actually had a walk-in soul when I came back with my NDE because, well, not because, but I didn't notice it right away. It was my daughter that pointed it out. And she was independently researching. She's like, I heard that some people with NDEs have what's called a walk-in. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you're different. The way you talk is different. The way you move is different. But it was like subtle. And so I
Mhm.
started looking into that and I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But I also was having a lot more, what we would call psychic abilities. Now, I've always had, spiritual gifts, but um, this is kind of what I'm talking about when we play this game of separation too. So, I associate. So I learned how to read runes, like Vikings. So I'm sure you probably noticed I have a lot of Viking tattoos. When I was about 9 years old, and that was my first divination, messing with. But my mom taught me, and then, my mom suffered from addiction really bad, and I started to associate all things crystals, spiritual, tarot, all of that with drug addiction.
Mm,
And so it really turned me away from my path or even wanting to explore. I'd see spirits. My ex-husband was like, Bree will make your house haunted because anytime I'd go to a house, like I would wake up, if you will, spirits. But really I was just a beacon of energy and they were pulling off of that. There's a science to it.
yeah.
Um, some people emit a frequency where, different vibrational planes can pull off of that vibrational frequency. So when you deep dive, so I go into pretty deep quantum physics with this, but we are all radiating at a frequency. Now, the reason why extraterrestrials or spirits or whatever can break through those frequency planes is because they're able to manipulate their frequency. Most of us in this reality can't do that. Well, they can, they just haven't got there yet. You have to kind of build yourself up to it, but you are able to raise your frequency. And then when you start to raise your frequency, the higher up you get, the more connected to your higher self, your channels, going up your vertical, like your meridians, and you connect back to your higher self. So that's what kind of what I do with people is try to show them or work with them on how to raise that vibrational state. But yeah, that's what spirits are. So if you're connecting to spirits very heavily, that means you're shifting vibrational states. Or they're able to connect to your energy and shift downward into yours or up, depending on what you're channeling, because darker energy is vibrate at a lower frequency. So if you're seeing like dark energies or dark spirits, then they're coming up to your energy and kind of pulling off
Mm,
of yours. So that's
mm.
kind of the science of it.
So it's good to keep our energy high. Good to keep our,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, yeah. That
Oh
makes
yeah, you
sense.
want to raise your frequency and your vibration.
Mhm.
Well, and I work a lot. So I have kind of a model with this. So I work with the mind, body, soul. Everybody hears that mind, body, soul. What does that mean? So your body is your nervous system. Your mind is your subconscious and your soul is your energetic system or your subtle fields or there's much more to it, but you have higher chakras and subtle fields. So those are what I call the soul, the energetic system. But in order to raise your vibration and frequency, your nervous system has to be in regulation. A lot of people are trying to raise their vibration and frequency with a dysregulated nervous system, and that's why they can't get past that peak. Why they feel stuck because
Mm,
their body or their nervous system is telling them they're not safe to expand because your nervous system is doing everything it can to keep you doing what you're doing because that's safe. It's familiar. So that's where you really want to work on that nervous system regulation, and then it will increase your vibration into the energy systems, and then your subconscious patterns or programming is fueling all of that. So those three are not separate systems, they work together, and that's why a lot of people struggle to get past that hump because they're working on, oh, I'm doing my mantras, oh, I'm doing my affirmations. Okay, that's great for the subconscious, but your nervous system still isn't feeling safe. So that's why we got to do breath work and yoga and start getting your body feeling that it's safe. And then you get into the energy systems, and that's where, that's reverberating back into those two systems. And so you can start to remove devices, karma, so I'm attuned to many modalities for the energy system. So um, the disalignment, unity consciousness, etc. I don't want to get too top path, but
No, but that the mind, body, and soul. So you that's around the work that you do. That's
yeah,
with people. Okay. Is that through the company? Like that's what you do with people and on like one on one. Like what are the things that you do with
yeah.
people?
Well, I do. So I do a lot of things. So when I talk about like my NDE, I mean I blew up my life, and so in the first year. And a lot of people don't really talk about this because you don't get a lot of follow up on NDE stories, but I went into a full blown spiritual high, right? I was like, I'm getting on my path. It's going to be great. This is how it's like I had my ego immediately already had decided this path was going to be beautiful and I'm going to be singing on mountaintops and all this stuff. And yeah, that's not how it happened. It was a full year where my whole life just fell apart. Everything. My marriage fell apart. Um my whole ego, I went through a hard dark night of the soul. Um and basically just soul crushing um break. And but the beautiful thing is, like I said, the universe is always delivering. And I tell people all the time, like, the universe is not working against you. It's not. It's working for you. But it really matters what you're resonating with and what you're sending out in the field. I'm actually doing a manifestation masterclass on this on Saturday, but if people are interested in why they can't get past, that is a big one. But we are always manifesting. We are always resonating, and the field in the quantum field is always responding to us. So um when I was going through that, I was sending out a signal that I needed guidance. So now I've got shamans coming in. So when I talk, I went 8 years of full-blown masterclass. I mean, I was going 14 hours a day. I mean, I was working with 4 or 5 different energy workers at the same time at any given time. So remember, I told you I was kind of a rabbit hole connoisseur. I mean, I had 8 years, I just dove into everything. And so now I kind of work more in the space of I'm a Reiki master, which happened before my NDE, which is kind of funny. So I was already like
Hmm.
on the path. I was like, okay, I knew energy work. So I had some concept with that with my Reiki training. But then I got really into quantum energy. So once I saw what I had saw, I was like, I've got to learn more about the quantum energy, quantum field. So now I work primarily in quantum healing, or quantum energy work. So I'm attuned to a lot of modalities that most people have never even heard of, like a Cosma or Metatronia, Metatrea, light therapy, um, vortex healing, which I really love that one. That's actually the Merlin lineage. So if you've ever heard of the wizard, that's that
Hmm.
one. So yes, I am actually a certified wizard. My cat, he's got 3 legs. He's around here somewhere. He's also a wizard. So he trained with me because with that one, your intentions just have to be set to heal the person. Divine energies channel through you. So that's kind of the big difference between Reiki, which is universal energy, that's your life force healing someone. Where quantum energy, I'm actually just a conduit in higher dimensional beings or inner, you know. So with a Cosma, for example, that's the Christ consciousness, unity consciousness. So we're channeling that. Metatronia, I'm channeling in Metatrea, and Metatron, which are the divine counterparts of Metatron.
Hmm.
So there are lots of different ways that you can use energy to heal. So that's kind of why I'm telling you guys that's there's a you know layers. There you go, layers of it.
It kind of reminds me like you're saying all these things and a lot of it's definitely going over my head. I'm sure some people listening to it don't know what a lot of this means too, but I've come to this point in my life where I follow the whole disclosure thing going on with ET and all this stuff. I'm into all that stuff. And I remember just I don't know, it was a couple months ago or a month ago that David Grush, this big whistleblower guy that's talking about everything he knows, he was asked in the front of Parliament about um, you know, is ET here? Like, who are they? He goes, oh yeah, they're here. And I'm not saying exactly what he said, but he said something like, yeah, like we know there's this a plasmoid species. There's this like he's talking about like plasmoids and stuff, and he says it with such certainty that you're just
Yeah.
like. But a lot of people are probably looking at that and be like, what? What? Like, what are you talking about, right? Because we're thinking
Yeah.
ET just look like us, or like it's all. But there's so much to it that
There's so much
there's
good.
so much to it that you're talking about things that if you haven't, if you take a small child, like if I take my toddler and I put her into a university class for any subject, she's just
Hmm.
gonna look at the ground. Like she's not gonna know what you're talking about, right? So it's
Yeah.
the same concept. Doesn't mean
Hmm.
we're dumb or we don't know. It's just we're learning all these different things, and it's gonna take a long time for us to get to that point that we know more about what we actually are and the things that
Yeah. Yeah,
are
I mean,
around
and
us.
again, everyone's experiences are, you live in a mirror hologram. That's what this is. It's mirroring everything that you are experiencing in your life is a direct mirror of who you are. This is the mechanics of the quantum field, right? So when you're having so like what you said with the extraterrestrials, so there's levels of vibrational planes. They're happening on the Earth right now. We see 1% of the fractal light that is happening on this planet. That means that there is 99% of what is out. So you don't see gamma rays, you don't see ultraviolet rays, you don't see, there's so much happening here. Um, there's a story I like to tell people that we all might have remembered, but do you remember back in January of 2024, there were aliens in the mall in Miami? Do you remember that
Yeah,
story?
I remember my TikTok blew up on it, and then it's like out of
And
nowhere, it
just
just
silent,
disappeared.
right?
It just was
Yeah.
gone. I saw these guys talking about it, saying they seen things, and they were like screaming and they were like panicking, and I was like, "What?"
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, those videos were gone and they were disappeared, and I was like, "Well, that was
Oh
weird."
yeah, it got Men in Black pretty hard. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because
Yeah.
there's a very important um thing that happened there. So I'm a remote viewer. I don't know if for people that don't know what that is that I'm able to lock into a target, a time, a place, a person, and view them from anywhere in basically time and space. So I went to remote view that incident because again, yeah, it was weird. It came out and then it was like kind of gone. So I was like, all right, what happened? Well, that day we got hit with the M-class solar flare. So what happened is everybody's vibrational state. So there's something called the body's or the consciousness scale. So if you're resonating, say at 350, you're vibrating at the frequency of love, right? But most people are down in like the 200 and 150. At least, well, this is getting better. The scale I watch is getting much better because people are coming back to self. But at that time, 150 to anywhere from 75. So what happened when that M-class solar flare hit, everybody's vibration jumped up. Now, when you raise your vibration, you jump into higher vibrational states. So yes, extraterrestrials are here. You just don't see them because you are not vibrating at the frequency that they're at. I see extraterrestrials. I will see them wandering around. Now, is it all the time? No, but I do know if I get into a really high vibration, I'll see them. And that's what happened at that incident was that everybody jumped up. So those extraterrestrials were just as surprised as everyone else. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because all of a sudden they're like, what is going on? Because they're already here. We just don't vibrate at the same frequency, but they're able to come meet us and vice versa. You are able to manipulate that frequency. And so, that's the big one I work with a lot of people on is like there is a science to what we call the metaphysics. Okay? And that's where I kind of live in is bringing the science to spiritualism because anyone that's like, oh, you have psychic abilities, everyone has these abilities. It's you have to attune to them and work with them just like any other tool. Like I said, your receiver cell crystal. We have been taught we are not powerful. That was all done by design. We have been entrapped within the society to believe that it's X, Y, and Z. But it's been hijacked and it's been
Mm.
hijacked for thousands of years. This didn't just happen in the last 60 years, this has been coming down the line. And there are people, nefarious groups that stand to benefit from you and me um not having that power, not remembering how powerful we are, that we are the creator of our reality. Because once you step into that and you're like, I don't have to accept this as my reality, and you truly believe it, because belief is the part. I mean, look at Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan is the best there ever was, but you will never once hear him say, ah, he's pretty good. I don't think I could beat him. You know, he lives by an undeniable belief that
Yeah,
he is the best.
right.
And that is what it takes. And not just that you're the best, but that belief that you are powerful, that you can do all of these things, because that's how all my gifts just really like opened up, like remote viewing. I mean, I can go into the Kundalini awakening. That was a little bit of the kick, but I was manifesting that. Like I wanted to be on this path because I felt like in my soul, this is what I was supposed to do. So it clicked everything into place, right?
Mm.
Um, so as I went through my near-death experience, that first year, everything fell apart. But I knew, because I had this experience, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I had held on to that belief that this is what's supposed to happen, right? So with that happening, then I have my Kundalini awakening, which for anyone that doesn't know, I do not recommend. But basically, I was sitting at my office, I was doing my book work for my farm, and I felt this crack up my like in my lower back, and this energy just shot through my body. And I did not sleep, not kidding, for 30 days. I thought energy was going to shoot out of my hands. And luckily I had said I had met up a shaman that was local. And again, this is how the universe just lines everything up, who helped me immensely on getting my energy back. But after that, so when I said I couldn't sleep, every time I'd lay down, I would immediately start astral projecting or remote viewing.
Wow.
I couldn't control it at that point. It was like just happening to me. So then that's when I knew that was one of my um, natural gifts, is out of body experiences, which then, as I started to realize what I was doing in my childhood, I'm like, oh, that makes sense that that would be my gift, that being out of the body, because I was, even when really bad things were happening, I was able to remove my consciousness from my body. But I didn't know that's what I was doing. I thought it was trauma, right?
Hmm.
Um, so it all kind of clicks. But that's what I'm saying. It was my undeniable belief that this is the path I'm supposed to be on, that they gave me all of the tools to make that happen, and that's how we can break out of the cycles, is that belief that you are powerful, and you are unconditional love, and you are an infinite light being, and the more that you embody that, the more that life that you're desiring just falls into place, because the universe can't help it. They want to help you. So whatever it is. But a lot of times, and this is where I get with people, we become addicted to chaos, or even worse, we start to identify our personality with the trauma we've experienced. So, as much as people are like, I want to heal, I've had a lot of people that I've worked with, that I have to break them out of that belief, because they believe that that trauma is part of who they are, and they're afraid of who they're going to become without it.
Hmm.
Because especially people that have had trauma, from 20 years ago. My mom's a prime example of this. She was stabbed. She was carjacked when we lived in Vegas. So she was stabbed 7 times.
Wow.
And yeah, it was horrific. And it's a huge trauma. I'm not taking that away. But she has now created an identity around it. So it's hard for her to break past that next step. She's getting much better. We've been working a lot with this, but that there's a truth to that. We start to build our identity around that, and that's where we limit ourselves. So where people are like, "No, I am trying." Yep, you are. But you got to change the trajectory of, I need to do more yoga, I need to do more meditation, and look at the trauma. And this is where I go into deep shadow work, because this is hard, especially people that have gone through really big traumas, like, I was child trafficked, for example. That's I had to break into the number one, like, no one deserves that part, right? But why did I have that happen? So now you look at it with compassion. Okay,
Hmm.
now you look at it with love, because something, maybe it's not big, we're going to look and find it, but something good came from that happening in your life. We got to find that, and we got to tether to that strand, because now, for example, like, I look at my childhood, and I work with women and men, sexual assault survivors. Um, but I'm not talking out of a textbook. I've been there. I totally know what you're going through and how hard it is to detach from that kind of pain. So I'm able to guide these people in a way that's not me reading, therapist is hard unless you've experienced it because
Mhm.
it doesn't just affect your body, it affects all of you, mind, body, soul, everything. Um, so that's why I'm like, you have to identify where the good was in that trauma, in that pain, because something good did come. And sometimes we have to excavate for it. It's not always just blindingly aware, you got to look for it.
Wow, so you do a lot of different type of work then. You're
Oh,
working
yeah.
with people in different ways. And I didn't want to say this was a benefit for you, but I am going to say it like that because the only word that comes to mind. But the benefit for you is that you had an NDE. So the way that like I'm listening to what you're saying, and when you're working with people who've had maybe they've been trafficked, maybe they've been who knows what's gone on in their life, but you because you've been out of body, because you've left and you've seen that this there's something that you've incarnated into this human body as Brianna,
Hmm.
and to experience all these experiences.
Hmm.
And I think when we hold ourselves victim to any type of trauma, we are we're locked in to thinking this is really you. Like yeah, I'm Joe, but I'm that's just that's my vehicle, that's my car.
Yep.
And so if you can kind of look at it like, okay, what am I learning from that? Like, why did I come into that body in
Yeah.
order to learn that? Like, what is it? And then what you're doing is you're kind of looking at it from a third person, like you're out of your
Yep.
body watching it. And I know that sounds kind of odd, but it really helps because it takes you away from being victimized and being stuck and strapped down as the person being victimized. You're now looking
Right.
at like, oh, that poor, yeah, you can give empathy. I'm
Yeah.
giving empathy to the body, but what was the purpose of me coming in to go through that? So it's
Yeah.
interesting hearing how you work with things, but that's kind of the way I take from it. That's what I take from it is that
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in
yeah.
fact, I would tell people, I'm like, what you just said is really pivotal because time is not linear, right? We have to have it here in the 3D to, so that I knew to get on here with you and whatever, but that's not how time actually works, right? So all things are happening all simultaneously, all at once. So when you said, to be able to go back and look at the body and, give love and compassion and empathy to that, I talk a lot about people or with people, and I work with going back and showing gratitude for that person who went through that because, that person, when we grieve those versions of ourselves, so there's another layer to not only do you
Mm,
have to heal the identity based in the trauma, but you grieve that person because you know that if you're really going to let go of that, that person isn't coming with you, right?
mm,
So I will do exercises with people and walk them through giving that person like because to me and this is why Breezy will circle us back in, why Breezy came back into my healing journey because I have so much admiration for that version who didn't give up, who didn't
mm,
quit, who kept fighting, even though I was going through the darkest things. Even I moved out of my house when I was 16. I was on my own ever since. And my 20s was really hard because I struggled with addictions and having my own, trying to, get it all together. So I look back at her and I'm like, what a strong person, and that's, I think, where people forget to show love and compassion and support and empathy because we give it to everyone else but ourselves. And when you start to really send that energy of love, because we are all things are happening simultaneously, you send that true love to that person, that admiration, you're healing yourself in the current because all things are happening all simultaneously, all at
mm,
once, right? And that is what I work a lot with people, like remembering how to give their self the love that we're all trying to give it. This is why a lot of people struggle so much with relationships or connection because we are pouring love into others and then we're going, well, why aren't they giving it back to me? Right? Because you have to give it to yourself. That's the key. It's all within. Everybody was looking for an outside. Um, solution, but it's all within us. We are the kingdom, right? So, yeah, I remember that was one thing that really blew my mind but it's funny because I go through the NDE like, oh yeah, that was crazy. But I think what really blew my mind was how much grief I felt when I knew I couldn't take those versions of me with. Like that girl, that woman had to stay in the past and had to stay in that I couldn't keep moving forward with the habits and the beliefs and the things that I had, built my identity around. So there's a huge level of grief to that because, you identify as that person. So
Hmm.
yeah, something people don't talk a lot about.
It's kind of like that thing when you hear somebody say, "Oh, it's so sad what happened to so and so. If they would have just got counseling when they were younger, they would be a lot better off, or they should have got therapy when they were a teenager because now look at them." But what you're saying is, you can heal. You can heal at
Oh,
any time, right? Like you don't need to be like, because we're looking at it like historically, like on a timeline, like, oh, when they were 13, this happened, and that made them the way they are now at 35, right? No, it's like, okay,
yeah.
then heal it. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, let's go back and
Well,
heal it
with
because it's
Reiki, we
time.
do we
Yeah.
do past healings all the time. With Vortex, I heal past versions all the time. Yeah, you could. I mean, you can heal the past version of you. Yes, absolutely, and
Hmm.
it will heal this physical body too. And so when I work with like physical healing, um, so all ailments are connected to um an energy, right? Or an emotion. So, first disclaimer, not a doctor, but whatever. So, every ailment has a connection to a energetic frequency, right? But your energy cannot be destroyed, right? Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. So, when you don't deal with an emotion or an energy, it has to go somewhere. And this is where, if you've ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score, or
Hmm.
the emotion codes, those kind of books, they're talking about this exact principle. Now, if you have, say, physical ailments in this body, and you come to me and you're like, I want to, work on whatever, then I would go back to the past versions of you and heal those instead of healing this physical body, because with that emotion somewhere can created the physical ailment. So I will look for where there was a trigger point and I would go back and heal that version of you so that
Mm.
it would heal the physical body, right? So that's
Wow.
where, a lot of people are like, how does energy work heal the body? That's how we do it. Or well, how
That's
I do it.
amazing. No, that's really
Yeah.
interesting even to hear the way you use. So that's energy work. That's energy work,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, which everything in the universe is quantum energy. We live in a fractal dimensional, I don't know what you want to call it. That's supernova. That's not the right word, but like a hologram. So if
Hmm.
everything is, if you're just a spark in this hologram, then yeah, you can heal all things within you by healing the light within the person. So, or the energy. For example, like the emotion anger, right? Anger is a very hard one. If you feel angry, like really work on releasing that emotion because it can cause everything from abscesses to cancer. So it's one of the main ones that most people are holding on to because they don't know how to release that anger. And I tell people all the time, like, start journaling. Get it out. Get it, transmute. That's what we're here. We are alchemists. We are here to alchemize the energy around us and transmute that energy, turning the dark into light. And everyone can do this. This is not something that I'm capable of that other people aren't. Everyone is able to do this. And I do a lot of workshops with people to teach them how to do this because it is absolutely something that every person can do. You all were given the gift to
Mm.
be able to do this.
Where do people find you? Do you have a website
Um,
or how do people get in touch with
yeah,
you?
so I have the website, so you can find everything. I have everything on there, like my podcasts and my books and all that stuff. It's lightandbreezycoaching.com. I do 20-minute free consultations for anybody that's really not sure where to start or confused about how it is I work with people. Because I have a very broad um
Mhm.
toolbox, but that's because every person's needs are different. I don't have a one size fits all, let's do this. Um, I work with everyone very specifically because I could see people's energy. I could see what's kind of inhibiting them from the next step because almost everyone that's come to me has exhausted all their resources. That's kind of it's kind of how
Yeah.
I tell people. I'm like, I'm usually their last stop because you've done talk therapy. Okay, talk therapy is great. There's a place for that, you know. It is good to talk and to work things out in the mind, right? But that is very surface level. This is why people can't get past it. You know, you're just kind of going through it again. You're not releasing it from your field. You're not releasing it from the subconscious because your subconscious is constantly creating um, this real. The best way the way I describe it to most people is I was like, you know, your computer. You have your screen open. You're working on that one screen, right? That's your conscious mind. But how many things are running in the background that fuels this ability to be working on this conscious mind, this screen, right?
Hmm.
That's your subconscious, and it is always fueling every conscious thought you have. So I always tell people like subliminals at night, like best way to start. Subliminal messages at night when you're sleeping, because your conscious mind will step aside and it'll be quiet. You can reprogram that subconscious mind. And so that's why I'm like, talk therapy is great. It has a place. I like therapy, you know, but if you really want to break through the threshold, there's other more powerful ways that we have at our disposal. And of course, you know, powers that be don't want people to believe in this stuff, you know.
Hmm.
Brings us back to our power and our divinity, and that's what we're ultimately here to do is come back to source.
I think that I think they're in a bit of a bind now though, because people are waking up so quickly and there's so much.
That snowball is going down the hill. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's
not going to be
already
able to stop
began.
it.
So it's just a
Yeah.
matter of how long it takes till everyone gets to this point, right?
Hmm.
But
Oh yeah. No, it's
yeah.
been fun to watch. I mean, you know, I've kind of gotten a bird's eye view of this awakening, and um, you know, it's like kind of watch. I don't like sports because I believe that it's just another tool they use to manipulate us. But it's kind of like watching, you know, a game of basketball for me. You know, I'm like looking at the collective versus, you know, these groups that are trying to keep us out of our power, and I'm like, we're winning. I like this.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Absolutely. I feel this exact same way.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. I always end the conversation with this the same way. You've kind of touched on it though, but maybe you can, compartmentalize it a bit. And I look at what everyone goes through, and then I hear these stories about people going the other side, and they feel the love on the other side. They have this experience. They see this. I love how you described it, kind of first time anyone's described it the way you did, where I forget how you said it, but like they were waiting to say like how you doing? Like how's it go? Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
like a blip in time and you have like this soul group that's waiting for you to kind of, so they're over there and this is all happening. What is the main reason we would put ourselves through so much, if
So
it's
that
if
we
it
can come home.
so we can come
It's
home.
like yeah, we want to go on this journey. They call it the game of separation. This is a game in the mind of the astral field in the divinity. We've come here to experience a separation of unity consciousness. So we've come here to have separation consciousness. And so it's all designed to see and how you win the game is you come back home. You remember who you are. You remember at a soul
Mm.
level you are nothing but unconditional love. And that is what we're here. So when people are like, "Oh, we're in this matrix," I'm like, to me, I see it more as a game, you know, and that's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that are probably going to hear that and be like, "My life is not a game; it's all strong." No, I get it, but we want to experience these things for our own growth, but also you have a soul contract. Your soul contract basically is going to state your soul is going to do X, Y, Z in this lifetime, right? Um, and you wanted that. You chose it because that's where I say I'm like, I don't believe in free will in the way that we've been taught. I believe that's our free will when we chose this path because everything in your numerology, your astrology, you look at all of it as a whole, not just separate unities, right? So people are like, oh, you know, astrology. But I do what's called a soul blueprint reading, and I take all of those. Plus, I read your Akashic records, which has everything your soul has ever been through in every lifetime ever. And so when you do something like that, it's like, yeah, we come back to our divinity. That's what we're here to do. And everything is there to support you coming back to your divinity.
Mm. So we put ourselves here in order to find ourselves.
Yeah. Well, not to find ourselves because we are already who we are at a soul because that's all you've ever been, right? So it's not really finding yourself because you're not becoming someone new. It's coming back to who you've always truly been, and
Who
that's
you
just
are. Yeah.
a
Who,
unconditional love,
wow.
and that's all it is. That who you are is more of the personality and the avatar.
Hmm.
What we are is unconditional love, and it's for yourself, for humanity, for the collective, for all things that, and when you go through these hard things, like, you experience these difficult lives and these difficult paths, it only makes you appreciate more what that unconditional love is. And you can experience that right here. This is where the heaven on earth thing comes from,
Mm.
because we are here to experience heaven on earth. We're not here being punished. I mean, yes, you take on karma because, the laws are the laws, right? But this isn't a punishment. And that's why I think a lot of people think that we come here and that they're being punished. It's not. Everything in the universe is working for your highest and best good. It is. You just have to find that light within it, because this is all shadow work. You have to find the light and cling to that. If you feel an urge to do something, do it. There is a reason. If something keeps coming back up, like before we got on, I told you I'm selling everything I own and I'm buying a motorhome. I'm going across the country to work with people. I'm going to do like book tours and work at different wellness. And again, this is another thing that my whole family is like, what? So I'm
Right.
doing it again, and I'm like, I just want to be out there and experience this, because that everything we don't have to be stuck
Right.
in the world that they told us to. It's
Hmm.
like I just don't fit within the mold anymore. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and meet people. And
Mm.
like I said, I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of things. Like, I want to go meet you people. I get people all the time. They're like, oh, if you're ever in this area, come. I'm like, that's what I want to do.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you came on, and I think there's a lot of insights that you've given. I think that I like that feel the urge, just do it. Obviously, don't hurt yourself doing it, or make sure it's don't just quit your job and run out and like make sure you plan and you're planning
Sure.
this.
I don't
But
know. I just quit my job, but
yeah,
sometimes,
I'm just
sometimes the
putting
best way
disclaimers
is
out
just
there.
to jump. There's truth to that though, because
Yeah,
if you're like, because if everybody's doing the safe thing, that's where if you want big shifts in your life, you got to be brave.
for sure.
So sometimes quitting your job, I mean, yeah, don't hurt yourself. Don't go, do anything that's going to hurt yourself physically. But if you have an urge to quit your job, I tell people, like, then you should.
Mm,
Because obviously something in your soul isn't resonating with that job.
right.
And
I get that.
unfortunately, a lot of us are working in positions that are killing our soul or killing our light, right? And everything was designed that way. I talk about education. That was not to teach you. I mean, I have friends that are in brotherhoods that are like, no, they took phonics away out of schools. It's because you are if people don't have the right words, because manifesting is your words, right? So if you don't know the right words or the right meanings of words, you're not manifesting in a high frequency, you
Hmm.
know. So yeah, it's all done by design. And and then us all going to work 9 to 5, we're devoid of passion. Not all of us, obviously, these people are living their life. You're a musician. I'm sure that you love what you do. But it devoids a lot of people of the light in their life. And sometimes taking that step, and I would say out of the thousands of people I work with, many of them have quit their jobs and they found their dream job very quickly,
Right.
because they took a bet on themselves and they told the universe, I'm ready, you
Well,
know.
that's exactly how I started my company teaching music. Is I had a terrible job. I hated it. It was soul crushing, and I spoke to myself one day, and I decided to just I'm done. And I had no idea how it was going to happen. I actually went to my boss at the time. I said, I'm gonna make the same amount I made this year doing music, and he laughed at me. And I remember being like, "All right, let's go do that," and I did.
You did.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so there's always you have to really that sometimes it takes people to get to that breaking point. But you're right, you don't want to it can be harmful to be in a job that's bad. So I mean that can kill
Yeah.
you,
I mean,
that can make you sick too. So it's very important to find your passion and your loves and the things you
yeah.
do. Yeah.
Well, that passion, that's self-hypnosis too. If you play music, so if you've ever gotten into like a really good like writing jam, or I don't know what you do, but writing or whatever. But all of a sudden you like look and it's been 5 hours
Yeah.
because you're in this hypnosis. So this shows you that's the science. Time's not real because when you are in creation and your passion, you would go into what's called a time loop. You
Mhm.
felt like you were there for 20 minutes, right? And all of a sudden it's been 4 hours. So
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of truth. There's science to all of this. That what you resonate in. That's the important thing. Find a passion. That's a big one. Everyone should have something that they're passionate about. Um, like I used to like to look at trees, you know, that was my passion when I was a kid. So it doesn't have to be anything. And I think a lot of us have been kind of lied to in the way of like everything, and this, I get a lot of people that'll come to me about, what's my purpose, right? You're living it. First, that's always what I tell them. Like, your purpose is to be, because there's something called the ripple effect, right? Where a lot of people think that we should have this big, grand, clear purpose, right? But that's been given to us by, media, right? Media is like,
Mhm.
oh, celebrities, they're icons, they have purpose, or, they're doing these. That's not how it works. Some of the most powerful souls that I've done Akashic Records reading on have the seemingly quietest life, and yet they
Right.
create biggest ripple in the field because they're usually the ones that'll do random, just nice, kind acts and things like that. So it's your purpose doesn't have to be something big, but you have to be acting out of that unconditional love and that passion and the creativity because that's what we are. We're a spark of source, right? What is source? The creator. You are the creator in body. So
Mhm.
so creation is incredibly important for what people are trying, especially when you're trying to get to the next level and you're getting stuck. Find something that you can just put like your creative passion into.
Mm. I love that. I love that. We'll leave it like that. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say thank you so much for coming on. This has been
thank
amazing. I
you.
feel like we could talk for 3 more hours, and we probably could about all kinds of things. But I really do appreciate you coming on, giving us some of your backstory on the NDE and the things
Yeah.
you do and the work you do. I would encourage anyone that is interested in the work you do. It's lightandbreezycoaching.com. Is that the
Yep.
main website to check out that? I always talk to the audience, say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired so we can get amazing guests like Brheanna on the show. If it wasn't for you guys, then I wouldn't get people on the show. So I appreciate you all very much. But thank you so much, Brheanna. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me.
So